Hey everyone, my name is Sepi. I work for a little company called IBM. We've been around for over 100 years, which is kind of cool. And I am an open source engineer and developer advocate there at IBM. I've been involved in the Node.js space for many years. I was part of a small group of people that worked to merge the Node.js Foundation and the JS Foundation about 3 years ago. And the OpenJS Foundation, which was born out of that merger, the OpenJS Foundation was born out of that merger, and I've been the chairperson of the Cross-Project Council, the top-level advisory committee, since the beginning of time as it relates to that committee. So now we have one place to call home for the JavaScript community, which is really cool too. And, I recommend you go check it out, openjsf.org. Tell me what you think. In addition to that stuff there, I am also a TC39 delegate for IBM. So what is TC39, you may ask? I will go to tc39.es, the TC39 website, for some clear text here. So let me read it to you. ECMA International's TC39 is a group of JavaScript developers, implementers, academics, and more collaborating with the community to maintain and evolve the definition of JavaScript. We developed the JavaScript, formerly ECMAScript specification, on GitHub. We meet every 2 months to discuss proposals. We're actually meeting this week. And to learn more about the process, please take a look at the 5 stages for new language feature proposals. And there'll be links at the end of the talk, and I'll include them as well. So you can also check out our meeting agendas and minutes to learn more. So that's from the website directly. I recommend you go check out tc39.es to really dive into the work involved in developing the JS spec. There's all sorts of information about reading the spec, which is, no simple task, but worthy for sure. And there's also information about contributing and what proposals are in what stage and so on and so forth. So today I'll give you a bit of an overview of what has landed recently and what is upcoming. Before I do, though, let me just remark on one more thing. So the OpenJS Foundation has a working group that focuses on standards, not just the JS standard, but all the web-related standards and the standards bodies that govern them. So a lot of the people that are in our org have also contributed to a variety of standards bodies over the years. And so if you're interested in this type of work, you could also join us there. The barrier to entry is super low. I just recommend you join our Slack, you check out the GitHub repo, and join our meetings, which happen every other week. We're about to have a planning meeting on December 1st, I believe, so now's a great time to get involved. All this stuff is public. The meetings are streamed. The GitHub is all public. The Slack is open to everyone. So yeah, I can get involved. That'd be great. So let's get to the meat of the sandwich here. Well, as a vegetarian, that doesn't really sit well for me, but you know what I mean. We're going to talk today about finished proposals that have or will land in 2020, and finished proposals that will land in 2021, and some other upcoming proposals that are of interest. All right, so let's get started. All right, so the first proposal that I will share with you is a dynamic import, and this landed in 2020. I'll show some code here from the proposal itself. We already had import, but this is a dynamic import, which you can run from a script tag or anywhere, not just modules. So here you can see in this example that I pulled from the proposal itself, we are iterating through some navigation elements. And for each one, we are importing some code dynamically and then, running that code and loading it into the page. And you can see how this would be utilized. And there are a number of benefits to this, things that we may only know at runtime. For example, the user's language. For performance reasons, not loading code that we don't need right away, and robustness for surviving failures. So yeah, that's a pretty cool one. Next, I will share with you Bigint, which is pretty cool. This has been being worked on for a while with a number of really smart people. And so, thanks to all of them for pushing this forward. This is probably not of concern to most people, but when you get into things that are big numbers, financial stuff and whatnot, this is pretty important. So let me show you a little bit of code. We won't spend too much time on this, but I'll just show you a short example here from the proposal as well. And here you can see, number.maxSafeInteger will give us this really large number, 9007-199-2547-40991. This is 1 less than 2 to the 53rd. And then you'll notice you add 1 and it does go up 1, but if you add 2, it gives you the same number. And so things are a little bit predictable beyond that max safe integer, but being able to use Bigint gets us beyond that. So if this is of interest to you, I recommend you dig into this proposal. There are a number of links out to talks and blog posts and stuff where you can really kind of dig into this further. But I definitely wanted to call it out because I know a lot of work went into this, and it's pretty cool. So let's now talk about promise.allSettled. This is an interesting method on promises here. So we already have promise.all and promise.race, and promise.any is another proposal. And promise.all short circuits when an input value is rejected, and promise.race short circuits when an input value is settled, and promise.any will short circuit when an input value is fulfilled. So all of these kind of short circuit at some point for different reasons, but promise.allSettled does not. So that if you pass an array of promises to promise.allSettled, whether each of those promises resolves or rejects, they will all, complete, and you will get the results back once everything has settled. And then from there, you can iterate through the results and check the status if you want to see whether it was fulfilled or not. So that's pretty cool, expanding on what we can do with promises. So that should be helpful for a lot of people, a lot of use cases. Okay, next, let's talk about global this. This is also 2020. And so this is available to you. The interesting thing with globals in JavaScript is it really depends on where you're running your code as to what the global object is. So in a browser, the global object is window, but in Node, it's global. If you're in a shell, this may work. So there's not an easy way to access the global object in code that is portable. So this proposal introduces global this, and that way, regardless of where you're running your code, you can access the global and be able to take advantage of that. Pretty cool. Let's talk about Nullish Coalescing operator. That's kind of a mouthful, isn't it? What's really cool about this is basically if you're trying to access object properties that are null or undefined or zero, the classic way to do that is to try to access that property and then maybe use the double pipes to provide a default value if that doesn't resolve. But with things like null and zero and empty string, those will be considered falsy, and it will give you that that default value that you may be trying to pass. And then so the double question mark operator evaluates to, if that evaluates to undefined or null, its right-hand side is returned. So I'll again take some code here from the proposal. If we look at this response object, we have a couple of things in here that would be problematic if we were to use the double pipe operator. We would get, for the null value, that would give us a problem. For animation duration, which would set to 0, that would give us a problem. Header text as a empty string would give us an issue, as well as the show splash screen set to false would also give us an issue. But as you can see here, we get the responses that we expect, whether they are falsy or not. So this has been a long time coming. Pretty cool that it's here. So, check out Nullish Coalescing. So let's talk about another proposal that's one of my favorites. This is optional chaining. And what's cool about optional chaining is previous to this proposal, if you had a nested object, if you were trying to dig into a tree-like structure, you have to check whether these like intermediate nodes exist as you dig down in. So using one of the examples here from the proposal, say you had a user object and that user object had an address property, which was also an object. And in there it had, street, city, state, zip code, whatever. So if you're digging into the street property on this object, which is now we're talking about 2 levels deep. In previous instances, you would have to say, user and then double ampersand user dot profile double ampersand, not profile, user dot address double ampersand user dot address dot street. And if that last, the furthest to the right, user.address.street, had a value, it would give you that value for the rightmost lookup. Now with this optional chaining, we can do the same sort of thing, but in a much nicer syntax. So we use the question mark and the period together. And so for each property that we are looking up, we, instead of just doing the dot, we add the question mark before it. So it does the nested lookup for us. So instead of all those double ampersands, we would look up user question mark dot address question mark dot street. And it's much more concise and readable and makes sense. So that's optional chaining. Works pretty cool. A lot of use cases, very helpful. Let's talk about string.replaceAll, string.prototype.replaceAll. So we already have replace on the prototype, and that's helpful, but only does the first occurrence of the regex that we're looking up. And there are lots of use cases where we will want to replace all of those instances. So that's where replace all comes into play. There are lots of use cases here, but a common one is and I'm pulling this from the proposal again, the looking at a query string. So say you have a search term and you want to, display that search term with spaces instead of pluses. You can kind of just go through and replace all of the plus signs with a empty space. So being able to replace all, pretty handy. All right, let's talk about promise.any. I mentioned it earlier in the talk. This is another finished proposal. This one should be in 2021. And, like I had mentioned before, promise.any short circuits when an input value is fulfilled. And let me show you this example from the Mozilla Developer Network, the MDN web docs. So here, if we look at this example for promise.any, we have the first promise simply rejects. The second promise resolves with a set timeout of 100 milliseconds. And the third promise resolves with a set timeout for 500 milliseconds. You can see correspondingly one is quick and one is slow. If we put those promises in an array and pass that to promise.any, and then do .then on that. So the first one that resolves, it will, the first promise rejects. So we don't do anything with that in this code example. But the one that resolves fastest at 100 milliseconds will be passed here to that .then. And the interesting thing here too is that when we do a catch on our errors, we get an aggregate error, which is handy as well, and was created to not break the web compatibility. So I'll read this a little bit from the proposal here. So why throw an aggregate error instead of an array? The prevailing practice within the ECMAScript language is to only throw exception types. Existing code in this ecosystem relies on the fact that currently all exceptions thrown by built-in methods and syntax are instance of error. And adding a new language feature that can throw a plain array would kind of break that expectation for previously implemented error catches. So basically, if you return an array of errors, that would be problematic for pre-existing code. So this is a new type of error instance. Cool, right? So yeah. All right, here's another one. This is logical assignment operators. And I'm going to use some code here from the proposal as well to kind of explain this. So in this first example here, in function function example, where we pass in A, we do a check to see if something was passed in. And if not, we assign it to foo. So pretty kind of basic example, but you can see this being widely used, right? So if we look at this next bit of code here, we pass in an options argument to example, and then we try to default foo to bar. But in this instance, we could trigger a setter, which could have unintended consequences. And then in the second kind of example here, ops.baz, we're trying to set it to quux, and that just is even a little hard to read. But again, we're just trying to see if that property exists, and if not, then we will default to the value passed. So if we look at this next example where we have these logical assignment operators, the question mark equals is basically saying if ops.foo does not exist, set ops.foo to bar, right? And if it does exist, then we don't do anything. So this is just setting a default value, and you can see it on ops.baz, right? So, pretty straightforward, but pretty handy. Okay, so let's take a look at proposals that are not finished. And so we're kind of, some of the finished proposals are still future per se, but these are these next proposals that we'll talk about are very much upcoming, still being fleshed out in stage 3 or below, stage 2 as well. But they're still very interesting and will provide a lot of benefits. So let's dig into a couple of these. So the first one that I am excited to share with you is temporal. If you've done any programming with dates in JavaScript, you know that that is a problem. If you do anything more than something, trivial, you quickly need to lean on some sort of library that will make this less painful. So like Moment was the standard. Luxon essentially replaces that. There are a couple others that are out there. But dates are a challenge in JavaScript. So temporal is this new global object, not unlike math, for example, that will allow us to work more better with dates. So here are some principles from the proposal. All temporal objects are immutable. Date values can be represented in local calendar systems, but they should be convertible. All time of day values are based on a standard 24-hour clock, and leap seconds are not represented. So, this should bring a lot of sanity to working with dates in JavaScript, which is awesome. Let's take a moment to highlight another proposal called realms in JavaScript. What are realms? Let me read this to you. Realms are a distinct global environment with its own global object containing its own intrinsics and built-ins. It's pretty interesting. It's been being worked on for a little while. It's in stage 2. Go check it out if that little bit that I gave you has piqued your interest. Another one to mention, top level await. It is still coming. This is stage 3. I'll read the synopsis here for clarity. Top level await enables modules to act as big async functions, right? So with top level await, ECMAScript modules can await resources, causing other modules who import them to wait before they start evaluating their body. So this is pretty cool. This has been being worked on by a number of folks, championed by my good friend Miles. And this will be a big one. So keep an eye on that one. There are a lot of proposals that are in the works that are really interesting. I wish I had more time to share with you more of the upcoming things, but definitely take a look at the proposals in GitHub. Again, go to tc39.es, and from there you can find all sorts of information, including links to current proposals and finished proposals and such. So I hope that you found this helpful and interesting, and I hope that it is merely a launching point for you to dig further into what's going on in the evolution of JavaScript. So again, my name is Sepi, and thanks for listening to my talk. Cheers.